water for the tourist
No.
up in here.
Take two, Austin.
Take two.
Well, hello, once again. My name is Mason Engel. This is Raj Kasai, James Salvatinos, and Tiffany Ashton. And we are here today to speak about Methanex. So, the CEO of Methanex, John Florin, is facing an extraordinary challenge. He's a newly appointed executive, expected to match impressive growth returns of the past, but he doesn't have the luxury of the past. He's facing political instability, international trade regulations, and he's constantly subject to the whims of the market. Ultimately, Methanex needs a new direction. Mr. Florin believes this new direction points at China, and we agree with him. My colleagues will support this claim momentarily, but first let me introduce our agenda. First, I will boil down our company's overview into three main values. Next, Viraj will consider the situational analysis, which breaks down into supply and demand. Next, James will consider both the alternatives we considered for growth and risk mitigation and our growth strategy. And Tiffany will consider our risk mitigation strategy in more detail. And finally, I'll tie things off with a recap of our overarching strategy. But first, the company overview. So Methanex's corporate culture boils down into three main points. The first of which is to establish a worldwide customer base. Methanex wants to serve customers all over the world. Next, Methanex also wants to provide customers with a global and reliable supply chain so transport can always be counted upon and is always at a low cost, which ties into our next point of low cost sustainability. It's Methanex's goal to maintain low cost and low prices, both for production and for the purchase of consumers. So with those values in mind, I'd like to pass it off to Viraj, who will talk about our situational analysis. Viraj.
Thank you, Mason. So first, I'm going to discuss the analysis of demand. So in general, the demand for methanol has been continuously increasing over the past 20 years. Based off the graph, fuel blending is a relatively new and an exponentially increasing market. Also based off the graph, you can notice that the demand for MTBE has remained consistently stable over the past 20 years. If you take a closer look between 2005 and 2006, you will notice that there is a bit of a dip in the demand for MTBE, and this is mainly because it was legalized in the United States as it was affecting the water supply. Its use as a clean energy source in European countries and other developing economies has a potential for a lucrative market. On the other hand, the demand for DME has been increasing exponentially over the past 20 years as it's a relatively new way to use methanol that is safer and non-toxic. Companies with higher economies such as China, Japan, and India have all been trying to develop new ways to utilize DME. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the analysis of supply. Methanol production is dependent on the natural gas supply, which is subject to price fluctuations, supply line interruption, and government restrictions. We can see this in both Argentina and in Egypt. Taking a closer look in Argentina, 3 out of the 4 Methanex plants in Chile were forced to be shut down because the Argentinian government put a halt on exporting natural goods. Now, this was quite an issue for Methanex as a large supply of the natural gas for the Chile plants directly came from Argentina. If you take a closer look at Egypt, Methanex had a joint venture with the Egyptian government. However, widespread anti-government protests forced Methanex to close down their Cairo plants and offices in the spring of 2011. Now, this was also an issue as that plant, the Cairo plant alone, could bring in $300 million worth of annual revenue. Methanol is costly to transport and costly to store for long periods of time. As a result, this leads to potential price fluctuations. However, as there are very few cost-effective substitutes for methanol, the demand usually stays pretty consistent. Now that I've talked a little bit about the analysis of demand and the analysis of supply, I'm going to pass it off to James here, who's going to talk about plan of growth and alternatives.
Thank you, Raj. So, before I get into the direction of Methanex and the widespread potential for growth in terms of Methanex market and the global methanol market, I'm going to talk about some of the alternatives we discussed and eventually ruled out. First, the first possibility we discussed was moving into Argentina. Originally, we thought that due to the fact that Argentina had halted its exports on natural resources, and we had 4 production plants in Chile, which we were obtaining our natural resources from Argentina, due to the fact that Argentina closed down its exports, we had to close down 3 out of the 4 production facilities in Chile. So our first proposed possibility was that we actually just move our production plant into Argentina so we could take hold of those resources as well as the stable government in Argentina, the relatively stable government. But eventually we ruled that out, mainly because Latin America only represents about 4% of the global methanol demand, which is relatively insignificant. The second possibility we discussed was moving our production facility out of Egypt. We proposed that idea because the political situation is relatively difficult in Egypt right now with a lot of unrest and anti-government protests, and we actually had to close our Cairo offices and our production facility because we're in a joint venture with the Egyptian government on a 60-40 production plant that's capable of producing 300 million revenues per year. And so eventually we ruled out moving out of Egypt due to the fact that because of the lucrative potential that this market, or that this production plant holds with 300 million plus in revenues per year, we decided to just wait out the political unrest, and it's going to be cheaper to just wait that out, and eventually resume production than to move our production plant out of Egypt. So with the alternatives discussed, we didn't choose these. We eventually chose a better option, which, as Mason introduced, our plan to move to China and also diversify our opportunities in China. So we want to relocate and establish a new plant in China's country, as well as expand our production boundaries into methanol-related products such as MTBE and DME, as well as fuel blend. So to start off, Methanex currently does not have a production plant in China, which is kind of troubling because the Asia Pacific markets account for 59% of the global methanol demand. And as Raj talked about in the analysis of supply, the cost to transport and store methanol is expensive. And if we don't have a production plant near such a large chunk of our demand, it just raises our cost and goes against our company values. And China alone demanded 37% of the global methanol supply, which is a huge opportunity to provide them with our methanol product. So as well as that, we want to diversify into methanol-related products that are emerging in China. And we feel that our plant relocation combined with our diversification into these new methanol-related products will be a surge of growth in China, and we'll be able to capitalize on such a big economy. So the first methanol-related product, DME, or dimethyl ether, makes up about 7% of the global methanol supply. DME is a relatively new and up-and-coming use for methanol, and China makes up the largest market of DME because they use it to heat their residential homes. If we move on to MTBE, it makes up about 11% of the current production demands for methanol. And over the past 20 years, MTBE's demand has remained relatively stable, and it would be a potentially successful market to get into if MTBE takes off in China, because as of recent, it's been used and been proven as a clean and non-toxic energy source, and there is a clean energy component, and it's also being used in Europe. Fuel blending is the third diversification opportunity, and it makes up about 10% of the global methanol supply, which is a pretty big chunk for fuel blending. And as of recent, China's government introduced national standards regarding fuel blending. And what fuel blending is incorporating methanol into the gasoline to make it cleaner and more efficient and less pricey. So China's government introduced these national standards of M15, or 15% methanol, 85% gasoline. And so if we are able to to capitalize on this market and provide China and China's government with that 15% of all gasoline sold worth of methanol, we can see a huge avenue for profits and revenues. So now I'm going to, so I talked about the alternatives that we discussed and eventually ruled out, and then our plan of growth, which includes moving our production plant into China, as well as diversifying our production boundaries. I'm going to pass it off to Tiffany, who's going to talk a little bit about the risks associated with our type of company and production risks. So she's going to talk about how we can make those less impactful. Tiffany?
Thank you, James. The two major liabilities Methanex is facing currently are its Chilean plant and its Egyptian plant. The Chilean plant is currently located inefficiently and is producing below capacity. Our Egyptian plant has been interrupted in the past due to political unrest in the region. Both of these conflict with Methanex's desire to provide its service cheaply and reliably. I'd like to first look into our Chilean plant. Our solution to mitigate risk with the Chilean plant is to cease production and liquidate our production facilities. Since the Chilean plant is only producing 0.94 tons of methanol per year, and it is located in a market that represents only 4% of the global demand for methanol, we would like to refocus the resources that we are currently spending on the Chilean plant to our plants in Egypt and China, so that we can have greater control on a larger market. Although we're going to lose those 0.94 million tons of methanol, we expect to make back whatever profits we're going to lose with plants located more strategically and which can produce greater amounts of methanol. Our second point with the Egyptian plant, we would like to maintain our production facility in Egypt. Although the Egyptian plant has been interrupted in the past due to the political unrest there, we believe that no matter who becomes leader of Egypt in the future, all future governments of the nation will be encouraged to work with our company, as they have a 40% share in that facility. We believe that the Egyptian government will in the future continue to be incentivized to maintain order in their country, both for the sake of their people and for the sake of our continued agreement. The Egyptian plant is also strategically located close to West Asia and Europe, which accounts for 23% of the global demand for methanol, and maintaining the plant will allow us to cut costs on storing and shipping our plant to the people who would like to purchase it. To conclude, I'd like to pass it back to Mason. I apologize. I'd like to pass it back to Mason for a recap and conclusion.
Thank you, Tiffany. Like she said, I'll just tie things off with a quick recap of what we've discussed. So basically, we can boil our plan down into 4 main points. The first of which is to remain in Egypt. And we chose to do this, like Tiffany mentioned, because we think the political unrest will die down due to the Egyptian government's incentive to encourage our facility to succeed. And second, we will liquidate our assets in Chile, and we'll do this because of the Argentinian government's restrictions on natural resource export. Next, we will diversify our product into methanol derivatives of DME, MTBE, and fuel blending. And finally, our biggest play is to open up a production facility in China to capture the entire Asian market, which represents a significant portion of the world's demand for methanol. So that concludes our presentation, and now I'd like to open it up for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
All right.